So I know I'm in the minority on this, but in my opinion, outside of the game two between the Sixers and Knicks, and then of course Nuggets, Lakers that both happened Monday night, the first four nights or days, if you will, of the NBA playoffs have not been very exciting. A bunch of blocks. Obviously, New Orleans, Oklahoma City. Game one was decent, but it was a lot of missed shots. There's been tons of misses. There's been tons of low scoring. It's gone back to the 80s and 90s basketball in some series. Even Clippers Mavs game two was in the 90s. Cavs Magic, of course, is a brick fest. And in my opinion, it's not great aesthetically pleasing basketball. I have said all along that I think the Nuggets Lakers series this first round is the NBA Finals. And the reason why I say that is because you got the stars. You got LeBron AD, you got Nikola Jokic, you got Jamal Murray, you got a Lakers team who has been red hot, obviously, as a seven seed heading into this postseason. And they have played possibly three bad minutes in the entire series, and they're down 0-2. You can make the same case with Philadelphia, where they should be 1-1. Obviously, the NBA 2 minute report came out and they talked about how Tyrese Maxey got fouled twice. And as I said on Championship Rings, which is obviously linked in the description below, this Tuesday with my partner Josh Unger. I don't care about that. I think the Sixers blew that game. I'm more so blame Joel Embiid for not rebounding. I still blame the Sixers for not executing the inbound pass. More so than I blame officiating, which I think is obviously inconsistent across the entire spectrum of the league and is the worst officiating out of all four major pro sports, as I said on Tuesday. But Miami beat Boston last night. They were pretty much historically great from three. Tyler Hero had a great game, and everybody else came along for the ride. Obviously, without Jimmy Butler, but Miami's not going to beat Boston in this series. I would be shocked if it goes 6 games. Now Boston, I don't think it's a great number one seed. I said this all year about the Boston Celtics. I never have bought Jason Tatum as that guy, as that leader. I have said constantly ever since they lost that 2022 NBA Finals to the Golden State Warriors. Jason Tatum is not even the best player on his team. It's Jaylen Brown. Jason Tatum is more talented. Jason Tatum gets them more points per game. Jason Tatum gets the awards. But when push comes to shove, when you need a shot from that guy, aka what Denver needed from Jamal Murray, because again, Nikola Jokic is great. He's the best player in the world. He can do it all. But Jamal Murray is the closer on that team. Jaylen Brown is the closer for the Boston Celtics, but he necessarily doesn't bring it every single night. He just brings it when the moments are on the brightest. But again, without Jimmy Butler, like we all know, it would be the biggest upset in my opinion, even more so than the Golden State Warriors in 2007, knocking off that number one seed Dallas Mavericks team. It would be the greatest upset, in my opinion, in NBA playoff history if Heat Ultra were to knock this off. And I said I'd give Miami a game in this series just because of Eric Spoelstra and that Heat culture. Without Jimmy Butler, they don't have the firepower to beat Boston in 4 out of 7 games. And I sort of feel the same way about New Orleans, who gave Oklahoma City everything they can handle in game one. And then Oklahoma City, like a very good team does, and this may be the reason why they are the number one seed, even though they are the youngest number one seed in the history of the playoffs. And they just came out and buried them. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, Chet Holmgren, and New Orleans, who now without Zion are mostly led by Brandon Ingram, who you can't really trust, and old Jonas Valanciunas and old CJ McCollum. It was not the New Orleans Pelicans night. Now, I think the Pelicans could bounce back. And again, if they play the way they did in game one, could we go into this series back to Oklahoma City tied 2-2? There is a small chance, though, I would bet money that I think it's going to be Oklahoma City 3-1. I don't think it's going to be a sweep, but again, I could be wrong on that. But my main concern here when it comes to the NBA playoffs is, as I said, there's been a lot of missed shots. There's been a lot of bricklaying. And I think that when you take a look at the way the bracket lines up, obviously Denver's up 2-0 against the Lakers. I think Denver will win this series. I think it could be a sweep, maybe five. Before the series, I had predicted the Lakers in 7 games, but I just think that the Lakers played their best and they lost 2 times. I think a lot like the Golden State Warriors Cleveland Cavaliers series in 2018 when the Cavs had their chance to make it a series if they won game one in Golden State. And then obviously they didn't, and they go on to get swept. So LeBron James and the Lakers are out. I think Minnesota's is better than Phoenix. I said it before the series starts. I said it, in the offseason. Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant, they don't work together. Kevin Durant is an old aging star who mysteriously left Golden State to go to Brooklyn, hasn't been the same since. Devin Booker is not a guy you can count on in a big playoff moment, even though he did make the 2021 NBA Finals. I thought that was more of Chris Paul leading than Devin Booker. And then Bradley Beal as a third star on a team with no bench is your fatal flaw, especially with Devin Booker, because they play the same position. So they're out. That Clippers Mavericks series is 1-1. And while I like the Clippers to win this series, and I think it could go 7 games, there's a world where Luke and Kyrie Duke carry Dallas to a victory if Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, James Harden are not completely on like they weren't in game two. So from that perspective, and also if the Sixers lose to the Knicks and Joel Embiid, who I'm starting to think is a very overrated star, he dominates the regular season, and you can clearly see his value because the Sixers, were 32-8 with him on the court this year, and then obviously became a 7 seed. So he's clearly, in my opinion, maybe the most valuable player in the NBA. Where without him, the Sixers aren't even close to the playoffs, which is why if you take out the MVP requirement, I'm not even sure if Joel Embiid wins it again this year. I thought last year should have went to Jokic. I thought 2 years ago should have went to Embiid. In my opinion, again, if Embiid is healthy, he probably wins it this year. I think it will go to Jokic. But if the Knicks do what they should do, which again, Jalen Brunson's been inconsistent in this series, it's been the Dante DiVincenzo's, it's been the Mitchell Robinsons, it's been the Josh Harts who sort of guided them to this 2-0 spot. If the Sixers do not come back and make it a series and the Knicks win, in my opinion, this NBA playoffs will lack severely of star power. And a fun fact that not one of you may know is Nikola Jokic, yes, he's top 10 in jersey sales this year, but he's number 10. That should not be the case for the face of the league. It should not be the case for the face of the league that Ja Morant for the Memphis Grizzlies, who has obviously been in a ton of trouble, who I have defended in the past, not for his off the court shenanigans, but for his on the court, because I think Ja Morant is a top 5 draw, maybe even top 3 in the league. If you're asking me who's getting me to a TV set, I would still say it's LeBron, it's Steph, it's Victor Wembanyama. I think he's absolutely up there. It's Ja Morant, and then for me, it is probably Denver. I don't, Boston doesn't get me to a TV set. But I think the big thing about Denver is they are a lot like the Spurs dynasty. And we saw what happened in 1999 when Michael Jordan left the Bulls. And this could be a similar situation here when Golden State's dynasty sort of goes away. And I talked about this a few months ago. If Denver's healthy in a 7 game series, I don't know who beats them. And they look even more unbeatable this year in my opinion. They may go 16-2, 16-3 throughout this entire postseason run. But Jokic is boring, right? Jamal Murray is boring. Nikola Jokic would rather go race horses than play in the NBA playoffs, and he's the NBA's best player. Luka Doncic has personality, but in my opinion, I still got to see him beat the Clippers. I still got to see him beat Oklahoma City, who I think would get ousted in the second round. And Luka does complain a little bit too much to the refs, though admittedly he's done a little bit less this season. Again, Joel Embiid, he's got a vibrant personality, but he's always hurt, and you can't trust the Sixers. So when I look at this NBA playoffs, as much as I like Anthony Edwards, he's cool and all, but he's just sort of arriving on this stage. So I think the NBA has a star problem, and I think it's glaring. I think if we're trying to put Jason Tatum in the superstar category, but there's people out there that think Jason Tatum is right now better than Victor Wembanyama because Victor Wembanyama only won 22 games this season, then I don't know what you're watching. Um, I think that the NBA now has increasingly become threes and dunks, which is again a bad look for the league. I think it's telling that in the new NBA media rights deal, there's a report out there that the the partners, ESPN, ENT, potentially NBC, even a streamer like Amazon, they don't want the NBA regular season, which is why the play-in tournament was created, and it was why the in-season tournament was created, so that these networks can get more prestige, whether it's regular season with the in-season tournament or playoff games with play-in tournament games, because the networks don't even care about the regular season because nobody watches the NBA in the regular season because it's, half the league's tanking, another 10 teams are resting their stars for the postseason, and there's only, seven or eight, or you could go up to 10, I guess, but it's really only seven or eight teams that are really fighting and playing hard for all 82 games. And these teams, like Oklahoma City, like a Cleveland, like a Indiana, they get past Milwaukee, and Giannis is down, and Giannis has been hurt. In my opinion, Giannis's reputation has been hurt by the fact that ever since that 2021 NBA championship, Milwaukee has been a massive disappointment in the playoffs, and Giannis has not capitalized on the chance that he could have been the best player in the world, and people are talking about him. Where now more people like me are talking about Nikola, they're talking about Luka, they're talking about Victor Wembanyama over Giannis, where again, Giannis was supposed to take that torch from LeBron. But I think that the NBA, again, can you market these stars? We saw how it went in the All-Star game this year. The All-Star game was a disaster. Can the likes of Anthony Edwards, can the likes of Jason Tatum, can the likes of a, Donovan Mitchell, who's still sort of a young star, can Luka Doncic, can they sort of help Nikola Jokic because Jokic is not going to be that marketable again? Um, can these guys carry the NBA through the playoffs? Are in the NBA going to be a dark time until Victor Wembanyama comes of age? Because I think Victor Wembanyama is absolutely the next face of the league. I think the NBA needs Victor Wembanyama in the playoffs now. I think that the Spurs should do everything they can to get some talent around him because I think Victor Wembanyama will be the chance to get people back to an NBA TV set. I don't think anybody in these playoffs will do that. So again, Oklahoma City's a fun story. Minnesota's a fun story. Even Miami winning a game last night was a fun story. Oklahoma City, again, good young team. Indiana is a young team with not really a ton of stars. Most of these series have been blowouts besides the two games Monday night. Going up against the draft tonight, we won't watch a ton of NBA, which is another telling thing. The fact that Roger Goodell reading names off cards will get more views than the NBA Finals game this year tells you, in my opinion, everything you need to know about the state of basketball. It's why I don't talk a ton of NBA on this show between, essentially December and March in the meat of the NFL playoffs and as we end into free agency, because in my opinion, you really don't need to. And I think it's telling that on a day where we had two playoff games last night between the Heat and the Celtics and the Thunder and the Pelicans, my main takeaway is I can't wait for tonight when the Stars, Lakers, Nuggets, Sixers, Knicks play, and I am more concerned about the fact that Caitlin Clark in the WNBA, and credit to her and what she's gonna do. Her first game is gonna outdraw any game in this NBA playoffs because Caitlin Clark is a star, and I don't know if the NBA currently right now has their face of the week in the postseason. That is Victor Wembanyama, and again, as great as Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray in Denver is, they're a lot like the Spurs dynasty where they're boring. And I don't know what the NBA can do besides, letting them play more like they did in March last year as we go to the playoffs to start the regular season. I don't know. They try the enticement. You got to play 65 games to win awards. I don't think that matters as much to players. I think the All-Star game needs to be completely revamped. Like I think it's a topic that we need to revisit here. The state of the NBA is not in great shape as we go through these playoffs and most of the games. We have at this point, every series has played two games. We've had 16 playoff games, and I would say at the very least 12, though I could make the argument 14 games. The other two, by the way, being Pelicans and Thunder game one, and then Clippers Mavs game two. But I could really make the argument that 14 out of the 16 playoff games, with the exceptions being, as I mentioned, Nuggets Lakers game two and Sixers Knicks game two, have not been competitive throughout. these first two games. Like that clip from the Brands World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brands World podcast right here on YouTube.